If you're a Canadian real estate investor trying to pivot into the US market, here are the 5 steps that you should know before acquiring your very first US deal. And make sure you watch until the end because the last point is going to cover creative financing so that you can create a repeatable model in the US market. My name is Ping. I've been a Canadian real estate investor investing in Hamilton market since 2010. And I'm just at the point where I'm sick and tired of the Canadian market. I'm not happy with the landlord-tenant board. I'm not happy with the tax. I'm not even happy about how much work that I need to make my investment work here in Canada. So I have already pivoted into the US market, 4 to 5x my portfolio since 2022, and also help over 80 people pivot into the US market. And here are the 5 steps that you should know before getting your very first US deal. Let's dive right into this. So the very first thing that you want to kind of figure out is your legal entity. The truth is that you never want to put any assets under your personal name, especially cross-border. There's a lot of things that you're going to do this remotely. This entire operation is going to be pretty remote, so you're not going to have as much control as you want. So the best thing to do before you even put in an offer is to register LLC, get an EIN number. These are probably the most important things before you even start putting in an offer. And once you have an LLC and EIN number, which sometimes can take up to like 2 to 4 weeks for you to actually get everything sorted, then you can start putting in an offer and register a bank account. Without EIN number, you won't be able to get a bank account registered. So you want to kind of get everything set up. So the very first step that you want to do is that you want to create LLC. I never actually recommend people to put real estate rental properties under their personal name for a couple of reasons. Number one, you want to make sure that your asset is being protected. So the moment that you start branching or expanding your portfolio, you don't want one instance to affect the rest of your portfolio. And under personal name, that means that anything under your personal name can be touched. So just from the asset production point of view, I always recommend that have a legal entity set up before you start acquiring property. And for Canadian investing in the US market, there's a couple different ways to do it. If you're not thinking about the double taxation, LLC usually is pretty sufficient. And all you have to do is to just get an EIN number. And without EIN number, you won't be able to get your bank account open. So make sure that you get that done. And for some of you who want to avoid that double taxation, the key word here is using the limited partner, LP, C Corp, and LLC type of structure, which I'm not going to get into the details about that. And the truth is that if you're not planning to acquire 3, 4, 5 properties all within 1 year, it's probably not worth the effort and the cost to actually get everything set up. But that's a separate video that I'm going to go into more details on how to avoid the double taxation for Canadian. But the very first step, LLC, EIN number, bank account. Once you have everything done, then you can start moving to the next stage, which is try to identify your strategy, market, and properties. This part can kind of be overlapped with the first step, but this is where you need to be extremely clear with the risk. US market is very interesting. It's very scattered. You have the A class neighborhood all the way to D class neighborhood. So it's nothing like a Canadian market where you go from A to D like gradually. So you can literally see the transition from A, B, C, D. In the States, many different cities, almost like all the cities actually, we see a lot like A to B to D or like B to C, or in some cases would be gated community right next to a very ghetto area basically. So you want to assess this entire area very, very careful because one street over, you can be entering into a completely different zip code, different school district, and you will feel the grading of the neighborhood almost right away. So the very first thing is that you definitely want to understand your risk, how you're going to get it. Is it a flip, wholesale? Is it going to be a more active approach like flipping or wholesaling, or maybe even Airbnb? These 3 different things are already going to be in multiple different locations. And also depending on the strategy, you maybe also need to consider the type of properties. And if you want to kind of do it a little bit more like passive approach, then you definitely want to start looking for more like a turnkey properties. Could be multifamily, just wait for like natural tenancy turnovers and all that stuff. There's a lot of things that you kind of need to figure out, but without getting into too much detail, the one thing that I really want to just point out is that understand your risk and really be able to understand what is a profitable deal actually look like. The cash on cash return typically in Midwest, you might be looking at anywhere between like 7 to 9%. If you see that, does that mean it's actually a good deal? Because in Ontario or in many places in BC, sometimes you might end up seeing like 2 to 4% only. So 7 to 9%, does that mean that it's actually a good deal in that specific market? For a lot of deals that we're seeing is actually ranging anywhere between 12% to even like 16%. So it just depends on what type of strategy properties that you're looking for. And once you can really identify the cash on cash return, the cap rate, the relation between your properties and obviously the neighborhood strategy that you're all doing. And once you're very proficient and familiar with the properties that you're looking for, the comparison and all that stuff, this is how you can actually aim accurately and land your very first deal safely. So this is the number 2, like really just to understand exactly what you're doing. A lot of people, by the way, underestimate the effort and the time spent in here, the knowledge gap, because they feel like that whatever experience they had in Canada can be duplicated into the US market. I personally went through that whole process, and really honestly, even for the first year, I was still making a lot of mistakes. So definitely don't underestimate the transition from Canadian market into the US market. If you enjoyed this video so far, make sure you like and subscribe, and make sure you watch all the way until the end of this video, because I'm going to help you save a lot of money on opening an LLC bank account. It's gonna be super valuable. Let's get right back into the video. Now, number 3, which is something really important, you want to be able to source and secure a deal in the right way. So number 1, I want to mention is that the deal flow. Don't just rely on real estate broker agents to be feeding you the deal. There's going to be a lot more community out there. You want to look at from a non-salesperson's perspective, so property management insurance agent's point of view, and just to kind of get a feel of which area is actually good. Once you can identify the target area, the type of properties, you started creating multiple different contacts, different community, and bring that deals into your inbox. And this is really critical, because the moment that you started having more deals, profitable deal that you can recognize, then you can really pick and choose what actually makes sense to you. So creating that deal flow personally is really important in this stage. And then once you have enough volume, then what you want to do is start making offer, because the paperwork itself sometimes can be very different from Ontario, BC, depending on where you are. But the most important thing here is that we need to recognize that certain part of the states, cities, the real estate professional is kind of like 5 to 10 years behind. This is one thing that I noticed about US market, is that working with them, it doesn't feel like this whole process is that refined. Basically, I'm not used to it. I have to kind of like take a step back and kind of understand that the dynamic of the market. Sometimes there's no irrevocable. Sometimes you're waiting for a verbal confirmation between the seller and buyer. Sometimes the response rate is just not on point compared to what we currently have in Ontario. That's my personal experience, and just want to share that with you. In terms of the offer, get used to the paperwork. A lot of little things that you may not actually notice in the very beginning, but the main thing that I always highly recommend anybody to include is inspection clause, financing clause, because these 2 conditions will allow you to kind of back up the deal without losing your earnest money deposit. Earnest money deposit is like what we call deposit here in Canada, but that's a term for the US deposit. And on top of that, the deposit amount typically is a little bit less than what we currently have here in Canada. So a lot of times we're doing 5 to even like 10% depending on the city that you're in. But in the States, a lot of earnest money deposit is only 1%. So if you're looking at a more affordable market, sometimes it could be like 200, 300K for the deals that you're looking to. 1% of that is only 2 to 3K. So it's not like 20, 30, or even 50 or 100K. It's a little bit just in thousands only. And the last thing is that the purchase price, a lot of people will get very creative with the purchase price, which is your down payment plus renovation. So this part, the reason why it's very interesting is because as a Canadian, if you want to be a little bit creative, there's a few different ways that you can actually do it. One is what I put in here. You can also try to use a line of credit from your primary residence or Canadian investment portfolio, and try to like kind of use this as your mortgage to buy the property cash. This will give you a really good advantage on negotiating on the price, because guess what? Cash offer is a very popular in the US market. People tend to drop down the price and they don't even want to go through the financing period. So if you're in a position where you can kind of pull a bit of capital to cover that mortgage, that usually will be a very scalable model. And the reason why this part is really interesting is because you can be a little bit creative with the financing here. You can use your LLC from Canadian Properties, Canadian rental portfolio, pull a bit of an LLC, combine that with the DSCR loan, the financing over there in the States, you combine these 2, all of a sudden this becomes 100% financing on a duplex to fourplex. That's around 200K. It will still cash flow. The rent and purchase price ratio is just a lot better in the US market. And on top of that, there's usually some business loans that you can also apply for. This is where you can kind of get a bit of a like 50 to 75K injection for the renovation funding. So these are the stuff that I will do another video breakdown to kind of show you guys how we structure our deal using creative financing. It's all just figure out how to be creative right here. Now, number 4 is that you always want to kind of be looking for that value add improvement, because once you can push up a bit of a higher ARV, after repair value, for your cash purchase, number 1, you're going to get a really good deal with a strong cash flow. Number 2, if you do a bit of value add, you can push that price a little bit higher, and this will allow you to do one thing, which is a cash out refi, which is number 5. And the reason why I want to combine these 2 is because building a scalable model is actually very easy for a lot of Canadian investors, because guess what? Even though there's no cash flow in our rental portfolio here in Canada, there's a lot of people with that strong equity that can pull it out. So the moment that you can identify your model, the business model in this real estate acquisition site, and you always try to do a bit of value add improvement, you can buy low, improve a little bit, and then once you push it to the higher ARV, you can do a cash out refi for the local bank, pull that capital out, and then pay back some of the LLC or creative financing here, and then you can recoup all those funding as your business capital. Once you can get that business capital back, now you have one asset that's producing monthly recurring income for you, and then you can recycle that capital into the next project. So this is by far the easiest way to actually buy the properties in the US market. It's going to be a lot of headache that you need to like structure after that. So if you're like, okay, I'm ready, I want to get into the US market, I want to like get this whole process started, don't just jump into step number 3, sourcing and securing a deal. You want to kind of get the LLC done, EIN number, because this will take time. As you're going through that, you can try to do number 2 and then get used to the market, and then you can close on the property without any stress. So if you find this video helpful and you want to like really get this whole process started, there's going to be another video that I want you to watch, which is how to actually register LLC, open up an EIN number without spending tons of money with a cross-border and accountant and lawyer.